Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started. So I originally thought this discussion with Maureen would be a two-parter. And after listening and editing, I've realized that we'll probably need to make this into a three-parter. So part one is all about the chakras and how we can work with them to balance ourselves and our children, to then help influence and approach with regard to holistic education. So in this episode, Maureen goes into really nice detail about how Ellen Tadd, in her book, A Framework for Wise Education, describes the chakras. I will be honest, this is a new look on chakras for me. So Ellen Tadd's description and understanding of the chakras truthfully makes a little bit more sense than what I had previously been taught or had read in books. So definitely pay attention to how you can incorporate some of her philosophies into your world. At one point, Maureen says, developing well function across the chakra system yields optimal development and learning for every individual throughout their lifespan. Yeah, hello. Who can't benefit from that, right? Anyways, she also says our children and us need to embody the perspective of I'm good because I am. Oh, so good. Okay. Also, around minute 24 or so, Maureen calls children tiny infinites. And then she corrects herself. But as I listened to that expression, I realized I completely love it. Our children are tiny infinites. Everything is possible in their eyes. They are infinitely innate, infinitely in tune, and in love, and incredible. So perhaps we'll all adopt that word. And when we speak of our little humans coming into this world, we can talk with them about how they are tiny infants. I love it. Okay, finally, towards the end of this episode, Maureen guides us through a meditation she calls the Tadd technique, and it comes from Ellen Tadd. It is so powerful. If you can at the end, and it's safe for you, close your eyes and do the mini meditation with me. It completely changed my feeling for the day. So much so that after this recording, I talked with a friend of Teal's who was having a really bad day, and her feelings had been hurt and she was like on the verge of tears. I actually talked her through the Tadd technique, and you could visibly see how it positively impacted her. So fun. And actually that kind of leads us into part two, because we're going to get into how you can teach this technique to your kiddos. Maureen gives some really good examples of how our children can benefit from a greater focus and how we can actually incorporate this into our lives and then help individualize an approach for our children. So she also talks more about her company, Creative Lives, and how she can work with you. My last note is to remind you that you can find Maureen at creativelives.org, and they are offering a 9-week course starting at the end of June. So be sure to go there and check it out, because it's all about how you can apply all of these techniques into your world. Okay, I hope you enjoy, and let me know what you think. Creative Lives Executive Director Maureen Burford is a veteran teacher with 38 years of experience in the field. With support and training from her longtime teacher, Ellen Tadd, she has brought Tadd's innovative methodology, a framework for wise education, to youth and adults locally and nationally in classroom and out-of-school settings. In 2019, she received the Lynn Von Trapp Award for Excellence in Leading Preventative Programming for Youth in Vermont. Maureen holds a master's in education and creative education from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and a BA in music from Cornell University. She is a professional musician and a lifelong lover of dance. Maureen, thank you so much for joining us.
It's such a pleasure, Jen. I'm glad to be with you.
Me too. And I am so excited about what you're going to actually provide our listeners because it is truly the blend of science and woo. I mean, holistic education. So let's just start there. What is holistic education? And then what led you to that work?
That's such a great question. And it's one I can give an answer from my point of view, because the field of holistic education has been around a while. My understanding of that in its broadest brushstroke definition is considering the well-being of the whole individual in the context of their relationship with others and the health of the natural world. So whole child within connection to others, to nature. When I was thinking about it, I was looking for a way to help children develop their minds, their inner lives, their physical health, their relationships, and their sense of being part of this beautiful natural world. So I knocked around on doors and looked, and then I met Ellen and gradually realized that she had a holistic approach embedded in her cosmology.
It's interesting because it makes so much sense what you're talking about. Like, why wouldn't we have a holistic approach to education? But really, when you start breaking it down, and I did read Ellen's book, and we can reference all of that in the podcast notes, but it's very interesting because we do really separate. We separate the empathy and the community in we introduce competition and grades and sports, and I mean we focus on getting the test answers right, but not how does it feel getting there, and things like that. So once you met Ellen, how did you know, like, okay, this is the content that I want to then create a curriculum around?
I was a little surprised by what happened. I knocked on Ellen's door to help me help teachers and parents. And I knew that what I'd studied with her had helped me so much. It had changed how I worked with others. But, Ellen, could I take some parts of your approach and your understanding of the chakra system to create a training program? And she thought about it and she came back and said, Maureen, education has a tendency to, swing from being overly child-centric to overly focused on preparing kids to do their work in the world. And I think it needs a whole child, a holistic approach. And my understanding of the chakra system really is that. I think you need to use the whole chakra system, not just parts of it. And I thought about that and I thought she's right. The chakra system provides a beautiful, natural, complete framework for looking at human development, teaching, and learning.
Before we get into that, tell our listeners what the chakra system is. And then I would love to go through each of them and talk about the perspective that you guys have, because I will tell you it's a little different than some of the perspectives that I had or had learned from teachers about the chakras. So go ahead and walk us through what that is in terms of energy centers, etc.
Sure. And I'm going to give you my experience with Ellen's perspective on the chakras, which is interesting because she's never read a book on the chakra system. Her experience came from her own direct observation. Like Piaget, she was interested in watching her own children. And she had an extra ability to see energy, which I don't have, but she did. And she got curious. Why do some people look like their chakras are quite distinct? And the 7 main centers seem to be very clear and they're doing well in their lives. They feel fulfilled. They're being creative. They're being themselves. And when people are struggling, why do the chakras look amorphous and mushy? What is going on? What is this system about? And in her meditation and from her own guidance, she heard to focus on her own experience of that. And so Ellen defines the chakras as an energetic system that exists in the energy body, which is connected to the physical body, and that the 7 main centers each have a really essential role to play in how we express ourselves, digest our lives experience, emanate our energy, and develop our gifts. And so her premise is very simple, but it's profound. Developing well function across the chakra system yields optimal development and learning for every individual throughout the lifespan. Her approach is very practical because I too had read books on the chakras and learned from several people about the chakras. And what I was taught there was quite different from what Ellen taught. So when Ellen teaches, her number one message to her students when learning something new is take this in for yourself, field test it for yourself, and make your own decisions. Don't just take what I say. And I remember putting down earlier books on the chakras and thinking, this is so interesting, but I don't quite understand how to make this a practical reality. So this approach is practical. How do we keep these chakras functioning well? It's not so much about the healing side, which many people work on, and I think that's wonderful, but it's how does this translate into practical knowledge that we can help our children with? Is that a helpful framework for understanding Ellen's point of view?
Yeah. So from what I've understood and what you're kind of talking about, I believe, is there's tons of chakras. So we're just talking about the 7 basic ones that run down the middle of the body. It's for all of you guys listening. I mean, I literally have a chakra flag here where, right, it's like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, or indigo, and then a violet or purple. It depends on how you talk about things, or gold for the crown. But it runs from the base of your spine up to the crown or the top of your head. And those energy systems have been talked about for millennia. I mean, this is not new. This is not something that we all created. They open up and they can spin and they can be balanced or they can be imbalanced. And that's what you were referencing with what Ellen was saying. Like, why are they dirty or ugly or not spinning or funky? Those are my words.
Yeah.
But
why are they mushy?
Right. Why are they mushy? I was like, what word did she actually use? Mushy, which is a really actually very interesting. And it's not like one little point of spinning. It's an energy that it comes from all sides of your body, right? So or at least that's what I've always been taught, that it's not just one little point.
My experience of them is that they have a sort of ideal size within the body. Of course, they radiate as you're saying, they radiate out, but they have a kind of proportion of alignment. And you're right, those energy centers have been observed by different cultures around the world. So many cultures have looked at this idea of an energy system. And by the way, the word chakra is a Sanskrit word, which means wheel, circular, sort of scintillating center. She looks at them from the top of the head to the base of the spine, which is different than you might have experienced before, because when babies are born, their crown chakra, which is at the top of the head, is open, and their base chakra has yet to open. As we go through, it will be more clear why that's so, but the base has to do with being a human being in the world. So that base is developing as babies grow. So from Ellen's point of view, and from mine, and I say this because I've taken in what she said and I've practiced it, and now I've practiced it with a lot of people, and I find it bears out in my experience. The crown chakra at the top of the head opens upward, and its attributes are a feeling of inspiration, devotion, spontaneity, that part of ourselves that feels happy from within, feels connected to something larger than ourselves, a sense of connection. These are the attributes of the crown chakra. And when it's functioning well, we feel happy from within. Ellen calls it the key to happiness chakra. It can become diminished or it can become dominant. And then, that can happen rather quickly in a child. So it's not that it's fixed. These chakras are fluid and they move. And we're not just a closed crown chakra person. We can all move towards good alignment and function in each center. The third eye chakra is smack dab in the middle of the forehead, a little bit different than it's sometimes depicted in other views of the chakras, but I do experience this point in the middle as the key point for opening and engaging the third eye. And when that center is functioning well, it offers us discernment, clarity, a feeling of wisdom, that is that we're seeing the consequences of our choices. And when that center is open, we don't feel fear. And we have a sense of wanting to act in the best interest of everyone, including ourselves and the planet as well. So that center of wisdom is a kingpin in the chakra system, because when it's functioning well, it helps all the other centers do their job. But it is not a center of action. So it needs the other centers that, they're working together holistically. Coming down then, the throat chakra is the center where we feel self-esteem and confidence in who we are from the inside out. A sense of, I'm me, and that's good. I'm innately valuable. And within that, then there's this curiosity to learn more about oneself, about other people, about the world. There is a desire to express oneself vocally and in written language and through music and through sign. So self-expression, and this center can also become diminished, which is a feeling of low esteem. And unfortunately, a very common theme in our country, low esteem. As children progress through school, their inner confidence can diminish.
Yeah, this one was very much when we talked prior to recording. I only ever associated the fifth chakra with expression. Or auditory connection to spirit, the messages in song or the whispers on the wind or how you articulate. You really challenged me on that. So as I read Ellen's book, I really wanted to see for myself. And I think that's exactly what you told me to do too. You're like, yeah, we'll just play with it a little bit, see if that works. The more I read about the other chakras, it made a lot of sense that it was almost like, and I know I always said, oh, well, I thought the third chakra was about confidence. And she does talk in her book about how there's two different types of confidence. Confidence is that you are expressing in the world, how you feel in a swimming suit, right, is more third based. But, fifth base is, are you confident enough within who you are to then express your true self, which is kind of how I articulate that in my head with how the fifth chakra works.
Yes. And, it's funny. I haven't numbered the chakras in so long. I have to think for a moment. But yes,
5. Sorry.
No, it's okay. From the throat chakra perspective, I think if you've never heard about the chakra system before or thought of it as woo-woo, or you have thought about the chakra system but heard about it differently, think about how you feel when you're anxious to speak in front of a group and your throat tightens up, or when you have something you want to say, but it's hard to say and you get that kind of tight feeling in the throat, or the feeling when you're trying to prove your value and you kind of get bigger than might be authentic, and you're saying things to impress. And that's a sort of dominant throat chakra. When it's functioning well, the third eye is informing what we speak and say. And that is such a beautiful combo. And when children are in the zone with their wise view or their third eye, I call it the wise view with kids, when that is open and they're speaking from clarity, they sound like sages because they have this innate, beautiful inner wisdom. So we want them to feel, I'm good because I am. And in our culture, it's so confusing. The messaging is, you're good because you did well in the test. You're good because you behaved well. You're good because you have this and you look like this. And, as we get older, you're good because of what you have acquired, your power over others, your prestige. But what really is healthy for the throat is to simply feel good and confident because we are.
Yeah.
Nothing to prove, nothing to defend, open to feedback, happy to receive critical feedback that's helpful for your growth, not defensive. So we need work on this center. And primary thing for those of us parenting is to help our children know that they're good and that their behavior is not who they are. We are not our behavior. Our behavior is an expression of our consciousness at the moment, our awareness in the moment. And that can be shifting around, right? So
for adults and for children,
for everyone.
I mean, let's not discriminate here. I mean, there are many times when I'm reactive and I'm throwing a tantrum. I mean, I put that in quotes because it's like I'm not throwing myself on the ground and tantruming, but yeah, I am behaving like an adult 3-year-old sometimes.
Yes, bingo. It's true for all of us, and there are some very wounded throat chakras started in childhood, most likely, because I think it's natural for a child to have an open throat when they arrive here. Why wouldn't they? What would make them question their value? but they learn to do that. And then that stays in through adulthood, and it causes a lot of suffering and confusion and actually destructive behavior.
And we're going to get into how this relates to education. But
Yes.
for now, let's continue with
so going
the
down.
heart.
Yes. The heart chakra is a big radiator. It's not a discerning center. So the message, follow your heart, can be a little confusing. You definitely want your heart to be open and radiating care for yourself and others, the courage to be yourself, the joy of being in the world and connecting. It's a huge energy center of connection. And Ellen defines love that radiates from the heart as this warm, unifying force that makes us feel glad to be alive. What a beautiful definition. She also defines loving as doing that which supports our own growth and the growth of others. So the heart chakra needs the third eye to be discerning what is the loving thing to do. And it's so wonderful for children and adults to be asking that question to guide the heart. But yes, when it's functioning well, it's open, and there is a feeling of generosity, appropriate generosity and warmth. Then dropping down, the solar plexus center is above the belly button, below the ribs, the center of emotion and harmony. And so it also needs to be integrated in order to appreciate what harmony is. So this center Ellen can call it the bugaboo chakra, because a lot of fears can live there. It's our feeling center. And so when we are not seeing clearly and we're kind of feeling our way along, we might define harmony as having things go the way we want them to go. So a good day is a day when it went well, and a bad day is a day when it didn't do well. But when the third eye is supporting the center of harmony, when they're working together, harmony and feeling add so much color to our lives, passion to our endeavors, and we experience harmony as the interconnection of everyone's learning. Everyone is learning. And so I have to accept, well, I'm learning that lesson, and yesterday it didn't go so well. Today it's going better. It's a learning process that we're all engaged in. So center of harmony, beautiful center, can fly out of balance in a dominant way, and we're reactive and overly sensitive. It can become diminished if that gets too hard, and then it's harder to feel empathy. But from this center, we feel empathy for the human experience. And then going down, I have to move forward in my chair because this one is like a teeter-totter. The identity chakra is down below the belly button.
I loved this definition, by the way. It's so valuable. So listen up, you guys.
I love this one too. So practical, because this center is the center of who we are out in the world. It's Ellen calls it the identity chakra because it's all about how we move out into the world with our creative selves and how we relate to other people. And it's about the balance that we each have of a directive and a receptive side. So we emphasize leadership in this country. We want our kids to become leaders. But, the balancing side of leadership is followership. So the identity center, when it's in balance, we have both. We can act and we can wait. We can lead and we can follow. We can speak and we can listen. We can give and we can receive. And it's often easier for each of us to do one of those than the other, or from circumstance to circumstance that might change. But when we're aware of tools and strategies that can help strengthen each side, it's pretty amazing to watch children find that balance point, which is helped by having clarity in the third eye. So if you imagine the third eye is like the fulcrum point, the wise view that says, stop and listen, Maureen, or, now say this, then the identity chakra is responding accordingly. And you feel like you're in flow. I think an athlete might call that being in the zone.
The zone, yeah.
I'm not afraid. I'm navigating. I'm passing the ball. I'm receiving the ball. I'm flexible.
Making good choices.
Right. So this center of inner balance and balance in relationship and confidence in being oneself in the world. So yes, it's also a center of self-esteem, but it's self-esteem in relation to others. Some people can feel really good about who they are when they're in the garden, and then have a little bit of a harder time feeling their value when they're among others. And it's complicated because, right, each one of us can be reflecting who we are depending on how we're focused in very different ways. And so the more people that are in the room, the more complexity there is. This is a complex center, and it takes time to develop. Children are, when they start to make choices, I like green, I want to wear this, I want to be called this, this is the expression of their creative self. And it's not as present when they're tiny tiny infants, but as they're growing, we see them coming to the fore. What pleases them? What are they interested in? What do they like to listen to? So beautiful center of the developing self in the world. And then the final one is the base, and the base opens down and it balances that crown that's opening up with discipline. That was a not happy word for me as a child. I thought of discipline. In fact, we open our discipline chapter in the course book as, discipline I thought of as being scolded when you didn't do the right thing. But I've come to view discipline as the habits and attention to detail and order and cultivation of skills across many aspects of our lives that give life to our potential. And from that place, the base is about helping us actualize our purpose. And when we help children feel it that way, then the hard work has an inspired quality to it because we're working towards something we care about doing. And, it can be a tussle center as a parent because kids don't always want to do the hard work, right? We have to kind of Pied Piper them along. We have to sprinkle some inspiration in there to get the chores done, make games out of things. But really, we want to help them stick with things that we know are going to help them. So the base, Ellen kind of organizes it to help it be digestible into thinking about skills that support the inner life, habits that support physical health, cognitive development, and then management of resources. We want to help kids learn to manage things and money and time and vitality, and then order and detail. And if that is in balance with the crown, it's like this magic combination of inspiration and discipline.
Okay, deep breath. It's a lot of information. Yeah. And I always like to regurgitate in my head, like, okay, did I actually get the concept of the book? And so this morning in meditation, I went through my definitions of the system based on the feedback and the writing in Ellen's writing. And I think for the first time, it just came easily. In my head, I was like, oh, well, yeah, and that. And I remembered inspiration. I remembered balance. I remembered discipline. I remembered so many things because I think it resonated and it felt real. That's where making learning easier, right? However she did it in that book, she made it easier for me to comprehend and then to take the next step to say, okay, how do I actually apply what this whole energy system is all about? So let's go there and talk about the framework for wise education. Like, how does this all work into the educational field?
Yes. A framework for wise education utilizes her understanding of the chakra system and then what helps each center function well, and organizes that into an approach that helps the whole child. So there are 7 categories in the framework that mirror the function of the chakras, and the categories are named for the emphasis of the chakra, just as you just said. Category of inspiration, focus and concentration, self-esteem for the throat, wanting the best for self and others is the heart chakra. The category of emotional well-being for the solar plexus, the category of persona in the world, becoming ourselves in the world for the identity chakra, and then the category of discipline for the base. And within each of these areas, they all function together, of course, but within each of these areas, there are specific tools and strategies that we can apply with individual children or in groups to help that center function well. in my experience of that, it has been so incredibly practical and really empowering to kids, because just as you said, wow, I kind of get this. Ellen's helped this make sense. Well, the tools and strategies make sense to kids, and they will make them their own and then continue using them.
Will you give me some practical examples? Like in my head, I'm sitting here going, okay, well, how do we do this with math?
Yeah, I will give you a practical example. So I had a teacher who trained in our program, was a middle school math teacher, and was working with a student who was really docile and seeming to pay attention in class, but wasn't getting the math. And this was a really bright and creative math teacher, meeting with a student after school, sitting with them. Apparently the child is listening, but still it's not happening. And after studying the framework, he thought, you know what? The third eye is the center of focus and wisdom. And it's the center that helps children retain learning and make sense out of learning. And he realized that though the student was being so polite and listening, he really wasn't focused deeply enough to see the math. And he came to me and said, he's not seeing the math. He's not seeing it. Why? So then he decided to have a conversation with a student about his life and found that he was struggling across his classes. Talked to some other teachers. Yes, the student is not doing well. It's like he's there, but he's not. The thing that this math teacher determined was really important was to make a deeper connection with the student around something that he did feel passionate and focused about. And this is a first strategy for any parent or teacher. If a child's not focusing well, where do they focus well? And the student opened up and began talking all about basketball. And so for the next 2 sessions together, all they talked about was basketball. It was the beginning of a wholly different relationship. They talked about math and basketball. The conversation opened up, and suddenly the student's curiosity and feeling of being cared about and feeling of being seen sparked his energy to want to focus. He learned some new strategies for cultivating his focus. And this was in 8th grade. It was a really important year, right? He's moving on into high school, pretty shut down. Polite, but shut down, under the radar. And it was a turnaround that went through his whole school day. So in the academic sense, we want to help students get in the zone, because that's how they'll make sense of what you're wanting them to learn. And if they're not there, it's just going to be harder for them, for you. So introducing focusing strategies into class. If a student's shut down and that's not working, why? How can you engage them? How, so on and so forth.
So let's give one of those techniques, because I know you have a really fun meditation for us. All right. So here is the disclaimer. If you're driving, you cannot do this right now. Well, you probably can do it with your eyes open, but I don't know. I just want you all to be careful. Whatever you're doing, just make sure you're being safe. But so Maureen, you're going to lead us through a mini meditation of how we can see some of the power of that focus.
Yes. We call this the TAD technique, because it's so helpful when you're getting a handle on this to really compare. Like comparing apples and oranges tells you more about the apple and more about the orange, right? So this will help you feel more about what your solar plexus does and what it's like to really be focused in the third eye as a comparison. So Jen, you can close your eyes.
I'm going to do it with everybody.
And listeners, you can close your eyes if you're not driving or if you're a passenger in the car. And put your focus in your solar plexus. So aim your focus right in that area above the belly button and below the rib cage, and keep your focus there. And while you do that, I want you to imagine that you are late for an important appointment, and you're late. And I want you to imagine navigating being late. What do you do? How do you feel? How do you proceed when you're focused right in the solar plexus? Stay there and imagine that. And Jen, when you have a sense of that, just float a thumb up into the screen.
Yes.
Okay. So you got a sense of yourself in that state. Okay. So then just going to put a little acceptance around that and imagine now lifting your focus as though it's an elevator. And you're going to lift it up out of the solar plexus and through the torso and up through your rib cage and up through your throat. And you're going to bring it smack dab into the middle of your forehead. And if it's helpful, you can touch that point briefly to just know where you're aiming for, right in the middle. And bring your focus there and hold it there. And it's as though a round window has opened in the middle of your forehead and you're gently putting your focus through that window. And when you feel you've found that spot and your window is open, then put yourself in the same scenario. You're late for an important appointment, but you're staying focused in your wise view or your third eye. How is it different? What do you do? How do you feel? How do you proceed?
Like that.
Mm-hmm. I could see the shift in your face. So tell us a little bit about the difference between navigating from focus in the solar plexus versus focus in the third eye.
So definitely felt heavy down in my third, or the solar plexus. Definitely felt it's interesting when you first gave that example of, or that put me in that scenario of being late. I felt my throat constrict. I was like, oh, I've got to communicate this. I've got to get this out. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, felt a little bad about yourself maybe in that moment.
Totally. Absolutely. Like, oh crap, I'm late. And I will tell you, as parents with special needs children, we often are running late or often running to an appointment or often like, oh my gosh, I lost track of time because we had a feeding tube issue or someone pooped their pants before we left there's so many things, right? And we're oftentimes late. And that is a really good example for us because I felt it. I was there. I was like, okay, frantically texting and like, okay, what are you going to do? Okay. Yelling at drive. I mean, literally in my head, I'm like seeing myself trying to like pass drivers on non-passing roads. I mean, that's that anxiety.
Yes.
And then when you had us raise the energy, it was funny. I wanted to rush it because I knew where you were going. And so I immediately flew it up and I was like, no. Part of the process is feeling as you go up the chakras, right? Up the system. And then as soon as you got me to the third eye, I immediately felt lighter. Like I actually felt the energy like come out of the top of my head and shoulders. And I took a breath and I said to myself, everything's going to be just fine. It's okay if you're a little late. It's okay. It's fine. Like really, everybody understands. And it was just like this, it's all going to happen just as it should. And yeah, there was a very easingness of it all. That really isn't that important, really, to be late for an appointment, whatever. It's not that important.
So good. I sometimes do that exercise and feel, oh, well, and if I went to bed earlier the night before, or if I had done X or Y or Z, sometimes there's a little correction for myself, but I don't feel bad about it. It's an adjustment. It's an awareness of how I might have navigated a little differently. But yes, it's this, there's no fear and there's not shame. And I was thinking about being a parent in a special needs situation. And in any time we're parenting, there can be situations where the well-being of our child is, and our decision-making around that feels really critical. So the more we practice holding focus here, it's like developing a muscle, like when a trumpeter is developing their lip. We can develop and hold that focus so that there's less fear to clear up. And the solar plexus is kind of healing and playing its role in a more relaxed way. So honing focus, it is. I feel that sigh that you had to. It feels so good. And, when I taught this exercise to children, they learn it quite quickly.
Okay. I'm going to stop it here because I think all of that information was really, really intense, and I know you're going to need some time to process it. So, as I said in the beginning, we're going to definitely get into how you can apply this to your life, how you can apply this to your children. Maureen goes into a lot of detail, and we brainstormed together some ways that we could incorporate this into like Teal's world and incorporating meditation or education around chakras and etc. And there's all sorts of more information and more really good nuggets. So I hope you stay tuned for the part 2 and then part 3. Have a wonderful week. Thanks for listening. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found 1 or 2 meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.